This next topic is one that we've been talking about for a bit. What do you want to call this segment?
Fender and Gibson are not competitors.
Yeah. So we get this comment a lot with the Gibson 2019 lineup coming out and Ryan doing, 3 videos on it?
I did.
You've done 2, and I was on one of
I
them.
did my
basically.
reaction to the whole line, and then you and I did the video where we talked about the actual value.
And then you did dip switches.
Oh yeah, I did the dip switches. So I've done 3 clickbaity Gibson things. Here comes number 4. Here we are.
Welcome
you
to
guys,
the clickbait.
You guys click, and really, you're the one baiting me into making more of these things.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about
Idiots.
this. I've been thinking, yeah, you bunch of jerks. I've been thinking about this a lot because a lot of the comments were like comparing Gibson to Fender,
right?
As far as like buyability and things like that, and like purchasability and whatever.
Yeah, and from a price range perspective, I guess that kind of makes sense.
Right.
If you're just saying like, well, but the whole idea of,
because you can go buy an American like pretty good Fender for just over $1,000, right? I feel like I need to look up the prices.
You can get it. Yeah, you can get like whatever the current equivalent to the Americans, the old what used to be the American Special, which might still be called the American Special. I want to say it's like 1,100, 1,200, something like that. The American Professional Series, I want to say, is like 1,600 or 1,700, something like that. So either way, people want to say like, oh, the American Professional Series is Fender's equivalent to the Gibson Les Paul Standard. But I guess where we're going with this is like nobody who is in the market for a Stratocaster, I should say nobody who's in the market for a Les Paul is going to a guitar store and be going, I really want a Les Paul. Oh, this Les Paul Standard's $3,400. I'll just get this Stratocaster instead.
Yeah, I mean, and the concept here that I keep thinking about, like, they're completely different constructions of guitar and completely different styles of guitar across the board, across all their models. Like, no one is saying, I can't afford this Gibson, I'll buy a Strat instead, or even a Telecaster instead. It's just, even with the Fender models that are trying for a Tune-o-matic plus humbuckers sort of concept.
Right.
I don't think those are grabbing Gibson sales. I think they're I think they're an interesting novelty for people who would still bought Fender.
Well, I think there's a little bit of that, and I think it depends on the price point. So I would say like the old like what they called the Fender FMT Telecaster, which is a flamed maple top Telecaster with 2 humbuckers. That was effectively probably, I think they sold for like $600 new. That was probably like targeting the upper end Epiphone users who were just people who were looking for like a mahogany body, maple top, dual humbucker guitar. But once you're in the price range of looking at like a a Gibson Les Paul traditional, like up in that 2K range, like you're not going in thinking, what is the best Les Paul for my money, and walking out with a Telecaster.
Right, totally. Like,
you might be going in and saying,
I understand that they're the 2 like biggest profile brands that there are in electric guitar. Is like a lot of stuff stems from Fender or Gibson, but I feel like they're so drastically in their own neighborhood that people don't buy Fender over Gibson or Gibson over Fender. They'll buy either or they'll buy both.
Yeah. I guess I shouldn't say like nobody, like I said earlier, like nobody would do it. I'm sure there's somebody who like has, because I guarantee
I'm scrolling through. I scrolled through Fenders that are available in Sweetwater,
those are
USA Fenders, and then I scrolled through Gibsons, and it's like some of the stuff lines up in the same price point, but some of Gibson stuff is wildly more expensive than Fender stuff. But it's still just, to me, it's a matter of just complete concept difference and construction difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, and it's not even that one is superior to the other. The general consensus, I guess, is that doing a set neck build is a little more complicated than doing a bolt-on neck build. But I've heard, it's funny, like we had a comment that said, why is anyone using set neck build? Set neck is dumb. Like everything should be bolt on. It's like, well,
Some people like that, and that's fine.
Especially if it's like a long tenon set neck. So you have like the neck is really like set into the body deeply.
Yeah.
Is that the right word? Long tenon?
I don't know, dude.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm mixing up my terms. But yeah, it is like an interesting idea. I think that there is probably some product crossover, but I think for the most part, like if you go into the store wanting a Les Paul, there's a range of Les Pauls for you to pick from. Probably if like you're trying to get a Les Paul with, say, if for lack of a better description, like you're trying to get a Les Paul with Fender money, you're just going to get a Les Paul Studio and be done.
Sure.
And I mean, really, like that's how it's always been, because 15 years ago, the Gibson Les Paul Studio was basically the same price as a Fender American standard Stratocaster. It was right around that $1,200-$1,300 price point. So it's just always been that way.
I think the only time Fender and Gibson are competitors, like the only scenario, is with people who are completely new to electric guitar as a concept, and they're trying to decide which road they're going to go down.
Right.
And that's going to happen in either Fender's Squire line up and through their Mexican line.
Right.
And it's against Epiphone.
Right. Epiphone, or maybe like Les Paul faded, Les Paul special.
But like the faded models don't even exist new anymore. Like we're talking about new stuff. If we were covering used territory, then it's like, the Mexican Strats
you can
that
still
are like
find
$300 are going to compete against.
You can still find the
faded.
the 2016, 2017 faded in stores. They are new.
Sure.
It's not like they all just fell off the face of the earth.
Right, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. But it is kind of like it's a funny thing, and all of this Gibson talk lately. It's like always so. Like Fender's models are kind of all the same price in terms.
Sure.
And what I mean by that is like the American Professional Stratocaster is effectively going to be within like $100 or so of the American Telecaster. The Jazzmaster is a bit more expensive, I want to say.
Right.
Though they have some different model price points in there. Whereas like Gibson, you're kind of all over the map. I think the Les Paul or the SG standard is like $1,600 or $1,700.
Yeah,
like it's significantly cheaper than the Les Paul standard. And really, with that one, that's the one that really throws me off because
I mean, still I say that no matter the price, because the concepts are so different,
right?
It doesn't matter.
That's one of those ones where it throws me off a little bit, just because from a build standpoint, the only obvious difference I see is the maple cap, and I can see the price difference of a maple cap being like $400 or $500. I have trouble wrapping my brain around the idea that it's double.
Yeah,
that's kind of weird to me.
Well, I think Gibson builds in different numbers and like a different factory setup than what Fender does too. Like Fender's guitars are very squarely like Henry Ford style factory guitars.
Right.
Where Gibson kind of leans more into a crafted guitar.
Sure.
Sort of factory scenario.
Yeah,
with
fewer employees, probably.
Fewer employees, but I think
a
also
little
just
more hands-on.
I would be very surprised to find out if they were selling the same amount of guitars. I think they work on a different business model. Mm-hmm. But yeah, looking back through Fender guitars that are US guitars, I'm not seeing anything pop over $2,000. Here's a limited edition parallel universe Strat that's like the Tele-style Strat, and that's squarely $2,000. I haven't seen anything else.
I
over
think if you
$2,000.
were finding like the Elite series, I think is
right. I mean, you
over
start getting into
$2,000.
like the custom shop stuff and things like that. Then you start popping over that. But like I said, I don't think the price is even a factor.
Yeah.
What brands do you think are a competitor with Gibson or Fender?
I think for Fender,
I mean, there's brands that probably compete with both of them. Like you think of like the Schecters and the ESPs of the world. Like they're trying to hit both kinds of guitars.
Right. So like the ESP Eclipse line, which is made in Japan, is going to compete pretty well with the Gibson stuff, I think.
I think who is actually, and this is based on so many comments on these videos that we've made, who is actually the competitor against Gibson, who is a competitor grabbing their potential market when Gibson is disappointing customers, is PRS.
Yeah, and that was the other one I was going to say is Paul Reed Smith, because they have the availability. They're
coming with the quality, and they're coming with the features that people who traditionally want Les Pauls are going for.
And the interesting thing to me about that is
they're kind of stratty guitars, though.
The guitars I've seen suggested is the CE line, which is a bolt-on neck.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think even the Custom 22 and Custom 24, I believe, are priced pretty similarly to the Gibson Les Paul standard. So people who are afraid of kind of getting bit by the Gibson quality control horror stories will gravitate towards PRS.
Someone was asking me in the comments, they're like, have you had a bad experience with Gibson quality control? Can you show me like what people are talking about? Because it seems like everyone says it, but they don't have actual like examples of it. Is it just something that we keep repeating as a mantra, like that they have quality control? I don't know. That they have quality control issues? I don't know. I haven't actually had those experiences myself. I know that some people probably have, but are we just noticing it more because it is Gibson and, you know, we kind of want to pick on them? Or is there a real issue there?
I mean, I think I have definitely played lower end model Gibsons that were pretty bad.
Okay.
Like faded series stuff where I was like, did anyone even bother like looking at the frets on this? Because they were like Squire bad.
Oh yeah.
In terms of like sharp fret ends, I wasn't finding like dead spots, but it was the kind of thing where like you run your hand up and down the neck and you're like
cheese grater.
Then you look at it and you're surprised you're not bleeding out, kind of a thing. So I've had that experience, but with the higher end stuff, I haven't seen it. I just, you know, again, it's horror stories.
Sure.
And that's, I think reputation is a big deal in that kind of thing. And the flip side of it is, you know, people will avoid PRS because even though they're priced similarly, like PRS unfortunately like does carry like either like more of a proggy air or a little bit of just a snootiness, whereas Gibson is the working man's whatever.
Is there anyone now saying that Gibson is a working man's guitar?
I think the visual is that Gibson is like a working man's guitar. I'm not saying that's a real thing. I'm saying that I
think like a Les Paul is squarely like, this is the classic. This is the double cheeseburger, you know, of guitars. Like this is the go-to classic rock guitar. And it's always going to have an appeal in that way, you know?
And that's what I mean. It's like when I think of...
Where like a PRS is like, it might be a double cheeseburger, but it's got mushrooms on it, you know?
Right. Well,
and it comes with truffle fries.
Yeah. And I think like when I think of... So, I don't know. When you think of Gibson Les Paul artists, like who do you think of?
Slash, think of, you know, Jimmy Page, think of freaking...
And when you think of PRS, who do you think of?
Carlos Santana.
Exactly. So, granted, like Santana isn't... Like Santana was just a different side of the Zeppelin.
I think of the Lone Rangers playing that show that night they got out of the radio studio before they went to jail.
What?
Steve is not following the reference.
What is this a reference
to? It's the movie with Brendan Fraser and
Airheads.
Adams. Yeah, Airheads.
Did they play PRS?
Yeah, they had the Dragon PRS in the end, and he pretended he was going to smash it, and then he did. And
gotcha. Yeah, and you know the funny thing about that, even as I run it through my head, is like Santana was kind of just like the flip side of the Zeppelin coin. Like
what he was playing before, like he was playing PRS relatively later in his career. Like when you look at Santana playing in the prime of his career, what I guess probably classic rock people would consider the prime of his career. His pocketbook probably says the 90s were the prime of his career.
Sure.
But you know, like in the 70s and whatnot, he was playing Yamahas.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking more along like I would say that both of them fit on kind of like the rock and roll spectrum. Led Zeppelin is just more on like the hard rock side of it. Santana was simultaneously both less and more accessible.
Also, like PRS was kind of one of the bigger guitar companies to go to like visual brands in the 90s into the early 2000s with all like the new metal stuff going on,
Right.
and a lot of the kind of like harder rock, modern rock stuff happening in the late 90s. And I think they really captured that audience, people who still look at PRS and like, oh, that's the guitar to get. The people who are, you know, gainfully employed working professionals now, who were young people in the 90s. People our age, is what I'm saying.
What would you say is the competition for Fender?
Everyone.
Everyone.
Like everyone makes a bolt-on
That's
Strat
true.
style guitar.
Well, and you know that there is definitely something to that, because of the pushback on the Fender American Professional being what I say, like 16, 17, whatever.
Yeah.
Is people are now saying like, well, if you're gonna spend that much, just spend another like $200-300 and get a Danocaster or a Nash.
I mean, there's a lot of great builders out there making Fender style stuff. I think their selling point is, and it's always going to be, their, you know, the name on the headstock.
Sure.
And if you want a Fender, you want a Fender, and there's benefits that come to buying the name brand. You know, it's the resale value is there, the collectability is there, the parts are there. Even though you can, you know, all these builders are using parts that are compatible with any Fender guitar, really.
Right.
And it's like, you know, the modability with a stock Fender is an attraction. They're a completely modular guitar, and you can do whatever you want with them.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how these, you know, the parallel universe stuff does as far as collectability goes in the distant future.
Yeah.
Like,
So
will these like really weird, like one-off kind of like they'll never revisit kind of builds, will they be just curiosities, or will they have value?
Right. So I want to hear in the comments, if you're seeing this on YouTube,
Or if you're on the Facebook group,
what kind of what you guys think of if you're considering picking up a Les Paul, like Gibson Les Paul. What other brands are you looking at? If you're considering getting something from Fender, what other brands are you looking at?
Yeah.
Leave us a
who
comment.
are the real competitors of these brands? Because I still say, going back to the initial concept, I still do not believe at all in the vast majority of cases that Fender and Gibson are actually competing with each other. I think they cater to completely different players. Yeah. And even if a player has guitars from both brands, it's not because they are choosing one or the other. They're choosing one and the other for different styles of playing.
What is it that you always say? Like, comment, subscribe. Leave us rude and nasty comments.
Support us on Patreon.
Yeah. Speaking of Patreon,
you want to do some housekeeping?